sterile scent of antiseptic clung to Craig, a phantom limb from his days spent navigating the labyrinthine corridors of hospitals and clinics. He was good at his job, damn good. Doctors trusted him. Nurses smiled when he walked in. Craig Taylor was a walking, talking advertisement for Big Pharma, and he delivered. Middle-aged, impeccably dressed, and armed with a disarming smile. He was the picture of success. Yet, behind the practiced charm, a hollow ache gnawed at him, a constant reminder of what he had lost. Sharon, his Sharon, the woman who he loved with a fierce, unwavering devotion. A devotion he'd drowned in a bottle, bit by bit, until she couldn't breathe anymore. The divorce was his decision, a twisted act of self-preservation he now bitterly regretted. He hadn't wanted it, not really, but the guilt of his addiction had festered, convincing him he was doing her a favor by setting her free. Now she was free, and so was Tom, his bright-eyed, mischievous boy. Free from him, free from the world. The gas leak was ruled an accident, a tragic, senseless accident. He hadn't been there. He was always somewhere else. Steffi, his daughter, now a young woman studying dentistry in college, was all he had left. She inherited the house, that tomb of memories. He couldn't bring himself to visit, not even once. Craig lived a transient existence. His life was meticulously curated, a carefully constructed illusion of simplicity. Everything he owned could fit into a few suitcases, always 2 steps away from a clean break, a fresh start, a way to outrun the ghosts that haunted him. Harlow was a city of muted colors and quiet desperation, a sprawl of concrete and steel on the outskirts of something bigger, something better. It was a place people ended up, not a place they chose. The sky was perpetually overcast, grey landscape of Craig's soul. Chain restaurants lined the main roads, their garish signs offering empty promises of satisfaction. The air hung thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and unfilled dreams. Harlow was a temporary stop, a place to catch your breath before moving on. Just like Craig, he gripped the steering wheel of his rental car, knuckles white, as he navigated the familiar, depressing streets of Harlow. His phone buzzed. It was Mr. Henderson, his landlord. "Hello, Craig. Just checking in." Henderson's voice crackled through the speakers. "About the lease. It's up at the end of the month, you know." Craig sighed, the sound lost in the hum of the engine. "Yes, Mr. Henderson, I know. I'll be out by next week. Everything will be packed up." "Oh, all right then. Found somewhere else, have you?" Henderson asked, a hint of curiosity in his tone. "Something like that," Craig mumbled, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "Just wanted to thank you for the past few months. Appreciate you taking a chance on me." "Well, you've been a good tenant, Craig. Quiet. Hardly knew you were there." That was the point, wasn't it? Invisible, unnoticed, untouchable. "Thanks again," Craig said, ending the call with a click. He pulled into the parking lot of his generic apartment building. The neon glow of a nearby convenience store, casting long shadows. He stared up at his window, a single flickering light in the darkness. Time to pack. Time to move on. Again. The announcement was a ritual, a carefully crafted performance for landlords who saw him as just another transient tenant. But it was more than that. It was a declaration of intent, a promise whispered to the darkness that stalked him. He would be gone. He would disappear. He would outrun it, always 2 steps ahead. Except that one time. It was outside of Sacramento, the dusty highway stretching towards a town called Havenwood. He had chosen it at random, a pinprick on a map, a place where he could fade into the background. As he drove along the main road, a road lined with gas stations and tired-looking motels. He saw it. A figure walking along the shoulder, shrouded in shadow, but undeniably there. It wasn't just the darkness, it was the shape of it, the way it moved, the sheer wrongness of its presence. It was the shadow he'd been running from for months, years maybe. He'd lost count. But it was entering Havenwood. He was headed to Havenwood. The shadow was already there, waiting. The realization slammed into him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and sending a wave of icy terror through his veins. The shadow wasn't chasing him. It was anticipating him. It knew where he was going before he did. It was a hunter, not a follower. This wasn't just about geographical distance. This was about something deeper, something insidious. The fear became a living thing, a parasite feeding on his sanity. It whispered doubts in his ear, poisoning his thoughts. Was he losing his mind? Was this all a delusion, a manifestation of his guilt and grief? Or was there something truly malevolent tracking him? A force that understood his deepest fears and exploited his vulnerabilities. Every creak of the floorboards in his temporary apartments became the sound of footsteps approaching. Every unexpected phone call sent his heart racing. Every stranger he passed on the street was a potential agent of the shadow. He saw it in the reflections in shop windows, in the fleeting glances of passers-by, in the distorted faces of the people around him. Sleep offered no escape. His dreams were filled with twisted landscapes and faceless figures, their silent accusations echoing in the empty chambers of his mind. He would wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, the lingering sensation of being watched, clinging to him like a shroud. He became obsessed with patterns, with predictability. He analyzed his own behavior, trying to identify the triggers that drew the shadow closer. He changed his routines, altered his routes, adopted disguises, but the shadow persisted, an unshakable presence that mocked his efforts. The fear was a constant companion, a gnawing anxiety that eroded his ability to function. It made him paranoid, suspicious, and isolated. He pushed people away, afraid of exposing them to the darkness that clung to him. He was alone, utterly alone, in his desperate fight to escape the shadow that knew him better than he knew himself. The pub was a dimly lit haven, a familiar refuge in a sea of anonymity. The scent of stale beer and fried food hung in the air, a comforting aroma that momentarily eased the knot in Craig's stomach. He settled on a stool at the bar, ordering his usual, a dark ale, something heavy to weigh down the swirling thoughts in his head. He tried to lose himself in the murmur of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the flickering glow of the television screen above the bar. But the anxiety gnawed at him, a constant reminder that he was exposed, vulnerable. He scanned the room, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for any sign of the shadow. Then she walked in. Rebecca, the receptionist from Dr. Albright's office, a woman with bright eyes and an even brighter smile. He didn't notice her at first, lost in his own internal turmoil. But then she saw him, her face lightening up with recognition. She moved towards him, a graceful figure navigating the crowded space. He stiffened as she approached, his pulse quickening with the mixture of apprehension and something else. He hadn't felt this in a long time. Not since Sharon. Craig, what a surprise. Rebecca's voice was warm and melodic, cutting through the noise of the pub. She slid onto the stool next to him, her arm brushing his. He could smell her perfume, a sweet floral scent that stirred something deep within him. Rebecca, he managed, forcing a smile. Didn't expect to see you here. Just getting off work, she said, gesturing to the bartender for a drink. Thought I'd unwind a little. Always a pleasure to see a friendly face. He shifted uncomfortably on his stool. Yeah, well, Rebecca leaned closer, her eyes sparkling. I always appreciate how thorough you are when you come to the office. You really know your stuff. Craig forced a chuckle. Just doing my job. You do it well, she said, her gaze lingering on his. And you're always so professional, but approachable. His anxiety spiked. This was dangerous. He looked around the room again, a flicker of paranoia in his eyes. Was someone watching? Was the shadow closing in? Rebecca was flirting. There was no mistaking it. And a part of him, a long, dormant part, was responding. He liked the attention, the warmth, the fleeting sense of connection. But it was a trap. He knew it. You know, Rebecca continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I've always wondered what you do in your free time. You always seem so busy. He swallowed hard. I have a wife, he blurted out. The words sounded hollow and unconvincing even to his own ears. The lie felt like a betrayal, a further erosion of his already fractured soul. Rebecca's smile faltered for a moment, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face. Oh, she said softly. I didn't know. He couldn't meet her gaze. He grabbed his beer, drained the last of it in one gulp. Well, it's getting late, he said, pushing himself off the stool. Gotta get going. Sure, Rebecca said, her voice subdued. Nice seeing you, Craig. He mumbled a hasty goodbye and practically bolted out of the pub, his heart pounding in his chest. He stumbled towards his car, his hands shaking as he unlocked the door and slid inside. He sat there for a long moment, catching his breath. The image of Rebecca's disappointed face burned into his mind. He hated lying. He hated the charade. But he couldn't risk it. He couldn't risk letting anyone get close. He started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the lights of the pub behind. He was running again, fleeing not just the shadow, but also the fleeting possibility of connection, of happiness. He was a prisoner of his own fear, forever condemned to a life of solitude. The new city greeted him with the oppressive silence of pre-dawn. Streetlights cast an orange glow on deserted streets, painting the peeling paint and cracked sidewalks in a melancholic light. He found the address, a small, dilapidated house, tucked away on a street where hope seemed to have long since abandoned. The landlady was waiting on the porch, a woman with weary eyes and a wary demeanor. She handed him the keys with a minimum of words, her expression a mixture of indifference and suspicion. "Rent's due on the 1st, she said curtly, before retreating back into her own house without another word. Craig didn't mind. He preferred it this way, cold, distant, unremarkable. The house was exactly what he needed. Small, anonymous, and slightly unsettling. The furniture was a collection of mismatched pieces, the kind you'd find in a flea market or abandoned on the curb. The grey wallpaper was peeling at the corners, revealing patches of faded plaster beneath. The air hung heavy with the smell of dust and decay. It was perfect. He could afford a penthouse with panoramic views, a luxury apartment in a gated community, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of town. He had the money, more than enough. But those things would attract attention. They would put him on the map, and that was the last thing he wanted. He needed to be invisible, to blend into the background, to become just another nameless face in the crowd. He needed to be forgettable. As he unpacked his few belongings, his mind drifted back to the night he'd actually seen the shadow. It was 2 years ago, in a different house, in a different city. He'd come home late, drunk and miserable, and found the man standing at the end of the hallway. He could still see him, clear as day, tall and gaunt, shrouded in darkness. He wore a long, hooded raincoat that obscured his features, and a large backpack that seemed to weigh him down. But it was the weapon that stood out. The object that had sent a jolt of pure terror through his veins. A crossbow, draped casually across his back. They had stood there, frozen in silence, for what seemed like an eternity. The man hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He had simply been there, a silent, menacing presence that exuded an aura of unspeakable dread. Craig had panicked. He'd scrambled backwards, stumbling out of the house, and never looked back. He'd left everything behind. His clothes, his furniture, his car, everything. He tried to tell people about the man, about the crossbow, about the feeling of being watched, but nobody believed him. They dismissed it as the ramblings of a drunk, the product of an overactive imagination. And that was the worst part. The disbelief. The feeling that he was alone, utterly alone, in his fight against something that nobody else could see. Even worse, the people who ever hinted at believing him ended up missing or dying under mysterious circumstances. A former colleague who offered a sympathetic ear had been found dead in his apartment, an apparent suicide. A neighbor who'd claimed to have seen a strange man lurking around Craig's house had vanished without a trace. He'd learned his lesson. He stopped talking. He'd stopped trying to explain. He'd resign himself to a life of solitude, forever haunted by the memory of the man in the raincoat and the chilling realization that he was being hunted. The days bled into weeks, each one mirroring the last. He worked, he drank, he ate reheated meals in front of the flickering TV screen. The order of these activities shifting according to his mood or lack thereof. He shuffled towards his front door, the plastic tray of the store microwaved dinner warming his arm. The lock was stiff, as if protesting his return to this dismal place. Just as he fumbled for his keys, his phone rang. He grimaced. An interruption. A crack in his carefully constructed facade of solitude. He glanced at the caller ID, a number he didn't recognize. Probably another sales call, another unwanted intrusion. He sighed, letting it ring. Finally, he managed to unlock the door, shoving it open with his shoulder. He tossed the keys onto the counter, placing the TV dinner beside them. The phone had stopped ringing. He considered calling the number back, a fleeting impulse driven by a vague sense of unease. But he glanced at the clock. Too late. Whatever it was, it could wait. Just then, his phone rang again. This time, it was Steffi. His heart lurched. Steffi rarely called. They talked maybe once a month. Stilted conversations filled with awkward silences and unspoken grief. He answered with a knot of worry tightening in his stomach. "Hey, Steph," he said, his voice rough. "Hey, Dad," she replied, her voice tentative. "Did you just try calling me?" He frowned. "No. Why?" "Oh, I just missed a call from a number I didn't recognize," she said. "I thought it might have been you." "No," he repeated, a shiver running down his spine. "Wasn't me." A pause. "Okay," she said slowly. "So, how are you?" He hesitated. "Fine," he said, the word sounding hollow and unconvincing. "Just busy." She sighed. He could hear the disappointment in her voice. "School's going well. I'm really enjoying my classes." He made a non-committal noise. He knew he should be more engaged, more supportive. She was his daughter, his only family. But the words wouldn't come. He was trapped in a cage of his own making, unable to reach out, unable to connect. She started talking about her classes, about her friends, about the challenges of dental school. He listened, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the missed call, about the unknown number, about the shadow that was always lurking just out of sight. He could hear the loneliness in her voice, the unspoken plea for connection, for understanding. She was reaching out, trying to bridge the gap that had grown between them since Sharon and Tom's death. She needed him, but he couldn't give her what she needed. He was too broken, too damaged, too afraid. "That's great, Steph," he said, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Listen, I gotta go. I have a lot of work to do." "Oh," she said, her voice flat. "Okay. Well, I just wanted to say hi." "Yeah," he said. "Good talking to you." He hung up the phone, the silence in the room amplifying the emptiness in his heart. He knew he'd hurt her, that he'd pushed her further away, but he couldn't help it. He was protecting her, he told himself, protecting her from the darkness that clung to him. The amber liquid burned its way down his throat, a familiar comfort in the desolate landscape of his existence. He poured another glass, the clinking of the bottle against the rim echoing in the silent room. Sleep was his only escape, a temporary oblivion from the memories that haunted him. As alcohol took hold, a flicker of warmth ignited in the darkness. A memory surfaced, unbidden, a snapshot from a happier time. It was a weekend getaway to the coast, a small beach town a few hours from their house. Sharon had practically dragged him away, forcing him to shut down his laptop and ignore his ringing phone. He had protested at first, his mind still tethered to work, to the deals that needed closing, the clients that needed service. "Craig, you need a break," Sharon had insisted, her eyes filled with concern. "The kids miss you." I miss you. We all need you to be present, just for a little while. He had relented begrudgingly at first, but as they drove along the coast, the salty air filling his lungs, he began to unwind. The stress of work started to dissipate, replaced by a sense of anticipation. They rented a small cottage overlooking the ocean, its walls painted a cheerful blue. Tom and Steffi were ecstatic, running down to the beach to build sandcastles and chase the waves. He watched them, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, a feeling of contentment settling over him. Sharon had packed a picnic basket filled with sandwiches, fruit, and homemade cookies. They ate on the beach, the sun warming their faces, the sound of the waves a soothing melody. He laughed as Tom tried to bury Steffi in the sand, and Sharon playfully splashed water on him. That evening, they built a bonfire on the beach, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. He held Sharon close, feeling the warmth of her body against his, the love that flowed between them. He watched Tom and Steffi gaze up at the stars, their faces filled with wonder. He had even managed to put his work aside completely, enjoying the simple pleasure of being with his family. He helped Tom fly a kite, walked along the beach with Sharon, holding her hand, and read Steffi a bedtime story. That weekend was perfect. A brief respite from the chaos of his life. A reminder of what truly mattered. He remembered thinking, as he watched his children sleeping peacefully, that he was the luckiest man in the world. His drinking was a problem then, but he managed it, kept it under control. Sharon helped him. He loved her for it. The memory was so vivid, so real, that for a moment he almost believed he could reach out and touch it. But then the darkness returned, crushing the warmth, extinguishing the light. He snapped back to reality. The cold, sterile reality of his present. The happy memory was a cruel joke, a reminder of everything he had lost. The last time he had sex was 6 months ago. A prostitute in a city he barely remembered. He'd sought a release, a temporary escape from the emptiness that consumed him. But even then, he couldn't relax, couldn't let go. The pleasure was fleeting, unsatisfying. He couldn't connect, couldn't feel anything beyond a hollow ache. He finished his drink, the burning sensation doing little to warm his soul. He stumbled towards the bed, collapsing on the mattress, the weight of his memories pressing down on him. Sleep offered no solace, only a temporary reprieve from the pain. The Glock 19 nestled against his hip was a cold comfort, a constant weight, a physical reminder of the danger he perceived lurking around every corner. He carried it everywhere, to the grocery store, to his appointments, even to bed. But it offered no sense of peace, no sense of security. If anything, it amplified his anxiety, fueling his paranoia. He often imagined it being taken from him, used against him. Another weapon in the shadow's arsenal. He found it easier to be honest with strangers, with people he knew he would never see again. In the anonymity of casual encounters, he could shed the carefully constructed facade of normalcy and reveal glimpses of the darkness that resided within him. These fleeting moments of vulnerability were a strange form of catharsis, a way to unburden himself without risking exposure. He'd learned to identify the opportune moments, the shared silence of an elevator ride, the impersonal atmosphere of a lobby waiting area, the monotonous drone of a fast food line, the disembodied voice of an untraceable telemarketer. These were the spaces where he could let his guard down, where he could speak his truth without fear of judgment or reprisal. He remembered being in the waiting room of a car rental place, flipping through a dog-eared magazine when a woman sat down beside him. She was middle-aged, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. After a few moments of awkward silence, she turned to him and asked, "Awfully quiet in here. Care to share what's on your mind?" He hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to remain silent, to maintain his anonymity. But the woman's genuine concern disarmed him. He looked at her, a stranger he would likely never see again, and decided to take a chance. "I was thinking about the accident," he said, "7 years ago, in the woods, pitch black." He paused, the memory flooding back, the images as vivid as if they had happened yesterday. The twisted metal, the shattered glass, the screams that echoed through the darkness. He didn't explain any further. He didn't tell her about the body. He didn't tell her about the feeling of being watched. The sense that something malevolent had been present that night. Instead, he said, "That was the night my shadow came to life." The woman looked at him, her expression unreadable. He couldn't tell if she understood, if she believed him, or if she simply thought he was crazy. He didn't care. He'd said it. He'd spoken his truth to a stranger in a waiting room. A fleeting moment of connection in a world of isolation. He stood up abruptly, gathered his breath. He couldn't stay there any longer. He mumbled an apology and walked away, leaving the woman sitting alone, her eyes following him as he left to wait outside. Craig sat slumped in his rental car, the greasy paper bag rustling as he unwrapped his burger. The aroma of processed meat and artificial cheese filled the cramped space. A momentary distraction from the gnawing anxiety that had become his constant companion. He took a swig from his hip flask, the whiskey burning a familiar path down his throat. He meticulously checked his paperwork, shuffling through the brochures, patient information, leaflets, and order forms for what he felt like the 100th time. He needed to be perfect, prepared, no slip-ups, no mistakes. His phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He frowned, his heart skipping a beat. He scanned the message, searching for any clue, any indication of who it might be from. Nothing. He concluded it must be a wrong number, a misdirected message sent to an unsuspecting recipient. He sighed, relieved, and went back to his paperwork, chewing on the end of his pen. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. He took the pen out of his mouth and, against his better judgment, dialed the number. To his astonishment, it was Rebecca. Rebecca from Dr. Albright's office. Rebecca, he said tentatively. Yes, Craig, she replied, her voice bright and cheerful. Oh, good, you got my text. I think you sent it to the wrong number, he stammered, trying to keep his voice steady. No, silly, she said, giggling. It was for you. Remember that text you sent me from a different number, asking me to meet you at the lake just outside of town? His blood ran cold. He hadn't sent any such text. I don't know what you're talking about, he managed, his mind racing. Oh, she said, her voice faltering slightly. Well, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize, saying it was you and that you wanted to meet at the lake. Then I accidentally deleted the text, but I really wanted to see you, so I went into your file at the office and found your number. Sorry if that's a bit stalker-ish. He could barely breathe. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Rebecca, he said, his voice trembling. Listen to me very carefully. Is everything okay, Craig? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Where are you right now?" he demanded. "I just arrived at the lake," she said. "It's so pretty here. I think I see you in the distance. You're waving your hand in the air." His heart stopped. "That's not me," he said, his voice hoarse. "Rebecca, that is not me." Confusion filled her voice. "What do you mean? It looks just like you." "Rebecca, you need to leave. Right now. Drive away as fast as you can. Don't stop for anything." "What? But I don't understand." "Rebecca, please. Trust me. You're in danger. You need to get out of there immediately. Drive to where I am. I'll send you the coordinates. Do you understand?" But what about my clothes? What about my cat?" "None of that matters, Rebecca. Just leave. Now, please. Trust me on this." He could hear the fear in her voice as she said, "Okay, Craig. Okay, I'm going." He hung up the phone, his body shaking uncontrollably. He stared out the windshield, his eyes scanning the parking lot, searching for any sign of the shadow. He trusted nothing, not even the limits of physics to hold it in one place. He had to protect her. He had to protect her from the darkness that had followed him for so long. He cancelled everything. Appointments, obligations, all vaporized in the face of the chilling certainty that Rebecca was in danger. He sped back to his dismal rental house, the tires squealing in protest as he took corners too fast. The 45-minute wait felt like an eternity. He threw himself into cleaning, scrubbing away at the grime and dust, as if he could somehow purify the space, ward off the darkness that threatened to engulf them both. The whiskey bottle emerged, a familiar crutch. One drink turned into two, then three, as the minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape when headlights appeared on the street. Rebecca's car pulled into his short driveway, kicking up dust and gravel. He met her outside. Fear hung heavy in the air, a thick, suffocating blanket. Rebecca stepped out of the car, her eyes wide and darting, taking in the run-down house, the desolate street, the strange man who stood before her. She looked beautiful, despite the fear etched on her face. Her hair was wind-swept, her cheeks flushed, but her eyes, those bright, intelligent eyes, were filled with a terror that mirrored his own. He saw her, truly saw her, for the first time. Not as a receptionist, not as a potential conquest, but as a person, a vulnerable human being, caught in the crosshairs of his personal nightmare. The silence stretched between them, thick and unyielding. Words seemed inadequate, incapable of conveying the gravity of the situation. He was scared, terrified. He knew what the shadow was capable of. He had seen its work firsthand. He knew that it would stop at nothing to get what it wanted. But something else flickered within him, a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, a fierce, protective instinct ignited in his soul. He wouldn't let the shadow touch her. He wouldn't let her become another victim. He would protect her no matter the cost. That resolve, that unwavering commitment to her safety gave him strength. It gave him clarity. It gave him something to fight for. They stood there for what seemed like an eternity. Two strangers, united by fear, bound together by a shared threat. And in that moment, Craig knew that his life, his meaningless, self-destructive existence, had finally found a reason. He took a step towards her, his eyes locked on hers. "Come inside," he said, his voice low and steady. "We need to talk." He led her inside, his hand gently guiding her elbow. She moved stiffly, her gaze darting around the room, taking in The peeling wallpaper, the mismatched furniture, the general air of neglect. He parked her car around the back of the house, concealed from the street, before following her back inside. Rebecca perched on the edge of a couch, her body coiled tight, as if she were ready to bolt at any moment. Her hands hovered in the air, careful not to touch anything. The visible disgust on her face was a mirror of his own self-loathing. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice laden with trauma. Craig ignored the question. "Do you want a drink?" he offered, gesturing towards the whiskey bottle on the table. She shook her head, her eyes fixed on him. "What's going on, Craig? What's happening?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You might need a drink for this," he said. She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'll have a drink." He poured 2 glasses, his hand shaking slightly. He handed one to her, their fingers brushing briefly. He watched as she took a tentative sip, her eyes never leaving his. He walked to the window and pulled the curtains shut, plunging the room into near darkness. The sudden action made Rebecca jump. He turned back to her, his face grim. He took a seat opposite her. The distance between them feeling vast and unbridgeable. "Okay," he said, his voice low and steady. "Here's the thing.